Hello, welcome back to the ministry. This is Taj McCameron. So, what am I talking about today? In all of the content that I have released since I told y'all about the exaltation, I never talked about the exaltation. I talked about your marriage. I talked about what's going to come after your marriage. I talked about all of that. But I didn't talk about that transitionary segment of time in which you're going to go from who you know yourself to be to who you are going to become. Okay? So that is what we're talking about today. What it is to be exalted. How are we going to talk about this? We're going to do a little bit of a overview of the film The Princess Diaries. And I may go into both of them. I don't know. I'm just going to let God flow through this because I'm doing this loosely. I'm not even going to go scene by scene, frame by frame, so on and so forth. And the reason I am not is because the high school content of the film, as well as the comical element, ain't got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm saying? So because of that, I'm not going to go into that part. But I am going to go into what it is that happens in that exaltation, okay? So my first point is some of you did not know that you were about to be exalted. And the Lord is pulling me on my chain to go to Esther. 1 second. So the Lord pulled me into the book of Esther. Lord, show me how you want me to go through this because I knew Esther was part of this. I just didn't know how we was going to go through the book. So rank and file me, lead and guide me. Let my words be your words. Show me what you need me to say. So, okay. It starts off with a young girl who just gets knowledge that she's going to be meeting her grandmother for the first time in her entire life. And she does not know who this woman is. But she knows of her, meaning she's never met her. She doesn't have any knowledge of her as a human being. She just has knowledge that this is her father's mother, and she's never met her father. She's only received gifts from this man for the 15 years of her life, and she's being prepared to go to 16. Now, as we know in society, we see it all the time. You have children, especially children of elite status, have sweet 16s. That is what you see a lot of children, like, they do for like a massive party for the person's sweet 16, right? So this is the closest you'll ever see to like a royal engagement and so on and so forth. Now, some regular people may do it, but usually it's people of affluence that do a sweet 16 party because let's just be honest, it's about money. Next to that, you see like the Mexicans do their sweet 16. God, where are we going with this? With the quinceañera. So what the Lord is trying to really bring attention to is a rite of passage season for a young girl. When we meet Esther in the Bible. She is a teenager living with her cousin uncle Mordecai, right? So I've seen multiple versions of the story of Esther told in film, so on and so forth. And we like to go by Bible, but I'm just mentioning in some versions. I remember I watched a old film back from like, I wouldn't even say that was the 70s. That was probably like the 50s or 60s. That they had a version of Esther of like the old movie stars. And in that version, it was the fact that when the king had demoted Vashti, what ended up happening is he wanted a woman, every eligible woman from the land to come to the castle. And in the film, in one of the films, Esther was actually supposed to marry somebody else. Which I found that being an interesting version, to be honest with you, that they even did that. But as we know, in the I'm probably gonna come back around to that before we finish this. In the original of the book of Esther, she was like a teenager, much like this girl is in the film The Princess Diaries. She had no understanding or knowledge that that's what she wanted, to go into a castle or go into rule of any kind. Now, what's my point of even bringing any of this up? Some of you, when you decided to start this walk with Lord, you pretty much weren't really looking for much of anything. You were probably in that phase of, God, my life kind of sucks right now. So I haven't seen anything good up until this point. My life don't seem like it's going nowhere. I tried it by myself. So let me try it with you and see where we're going. So most of us, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, was really just in that phase of, Lord, you get me the house, you get me the stable living condition, you get me peace of mind. We got this prayer life that we got going. I'm an artist and I'm a creative, so we work with that. Maybe actually create a career around it. But you really wasn't looking for nothing major. You was just kind of out here like, if I get my basic needs met, a home, shelter, food, while I'm at it, I don't have a relationship life with an actual another human being in the sense of dating and potential marriage, because I would like kids. These were the things you were probably praying. You know? Simple stuff. To go off to a natural, naturey place and just live off on a farm some daggone way. Or a nice plot of land that you could farm and have a nice house, you know. And you know that there were certain things in your life that didn't add up and they were financial siphoning spirits. And once you learned what those things were, you were like, hey, this money was taken out of my life, so let me get that back too. So let's do that, God. And God was like, yeah, we're going to do that. But in order for me to do that, I need to put you in the position that all that's going to come back to you. So I'm going to need to exalt you. And you were kind of like, I ain't really asked for all that. But you know what? The past couple of days, I've been hearing these words where people have been saying, you didn't really ask for all this, did you? Did you? Now, let's be honest. We wasn't sitting there asking for kingship, queenship, crownship, to be crowned as queen or king, to be exalted into any type of princeship, to be given major authority in anything. It was just like, can I have my house? Maybe a car, a husband, and that 2.5 children. I don't ever understand why they say 0.5. I never got it. Because the child isn't a half, but I guess they call it an infant. Whatever. That's what you be praying for. And God said, because you were willing, because you were obedient, every time I asked you to pray for somebody, you stuck with it. Even when those people start acting real strange and funny, you stuck with it. Even when people started to harass and act foolish with you, you stuck with it. Even when people vilified and persecuted you, you stuck with it. And the word says in Isaiah 61, 7 and 8, I'm going to richly reward you for all that you had to go through to get to this point. Because some of y'all, not just were you being persecuted, the wilderness that you walked through was hell in a handbasket. And God said, I got you for this. I got you for this. Because you walked through it. I got you for this. And I hear a lot of people saying in this season, you weren't the one that sat there and asked for money. I never asked for money. I asked for what was owed back to me. That's it. In the multiplication in which the word declares I have the right to have it. That's all I want. Because I have the understanding that in getting the multiplication back into what it was that the Lord declared in His word, whatever God called me to do in this earth, I'm going to be favored financially and through people for that thing to happen and to transpire. But the one thing I've learned in walking with God, especially when it comes down to exaltation, is that in order for you to receive the things in which God needs to give you, in order to give you the money back, in order to give you the housing that is adequate for the child of God that He has made you into being, in order for Him to richly reward you for what you had to go through to get here, He's not going to have you go through all that hell He had you walk through, whatever your hell was, and then say, I'm going to just give you a house in this little quaint little place where you can be obscure to everybody else and ain't nobody going to see. Out in the middle of nowhere with much fields and vineyard where ain't nobody going to be able to find you. That was such a cute idea of you. That's so nice. I mean, really. But you've done too much for me. I can't not give you the full treatment. Because see, we've been so used to our society saying we're only worthy of getting this much. And especially once you've been beat down and gone through wilderness and life has beat you up, you just like, can I just get the basic need? Give you a nice house, the husband, the house out in the middle of wherever you want it. And God's like, I gotta richly reward you. And rich reward looks like the whole package. So coming back into this film, in the first scene in which you see her, getting to her grandmother's house. It's a gated community, and they have grass keepers that even when she runs across the lawn to get to the front door, she comes to the realization that she can't even walk on the grass because of the fact that of that thing. So with that being said, number one, I want to say this because the Lord is bringing my attention to it. Some of you, there's been a spotlight on you for your life. Meaning, when I watched this scene, I came to the realization, why did the grandmother have a house in the same city, catch this, as her, if she wasn't watching, observing, keeping an eye on? That girl didn't have to travel all the way to the country to meet her grandmother. No. The grandmother had her own property in that city, which let me know that that grandmother had been keeping tabs on her for years. Some of you, because of the way that God was planning to position you all up until this point, people have been keeping tabs on you for years that were being prepared when the timing was right to exalt you. Esther, she had no clue she was ever going to be exalted. But even the fact that her cousin uncle was covering her, he was meant to keep an eye on her up until the point. Because remember, her parents passed away. We still to this day don't know what happened. I've seen in renditions in films that the mother was traveling on a camel while she was pregnant with her, and then she passed out, and then I don't know what happened after that, but the mother ended up passing away, and so there are multiple renditions as to what could have happened. But she was raised by whoever it was that she was raised by. This young girl had a knowledge of her life in the way in which she knew it to be. But it was protected in an element that even the fact that she was going to the high school that she went to was a sign. Because she wasn't going to a regular high school. She was going to a private school in which needed to be paid for. And it was her grandmother and father's affordance that allotted her the ability to go to that private school. God knows what path He wants you to take. A lot of our steps have been ordered by the Lord even before we understood or decided to give our life consciously to the Lord. It was a path that was already chosen, which is a blessing to y'all. Side note, that are waiting on kingdom marriage. Guess what? And somebody was saying this yesterday in something I was listening to. A lot of y'all sit up there thinking that your God-ordained spouse had a lot of decision in his choices in what he made to get to where he's gotten up until this point. Just like your steps were ordered, the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of his life, guess what? God ordered that too. I heard Dana Ray say the other day something, and it makes a lot of sense. That a lot of you have been having temper tantrums about the fact of your God-ordained spouse and what he was going through and counterfeits and the fact that other women had been in his bed and his life and his blah, 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 blah. And she said that when God showed her the end result was his heart turning towards her and wanting her to a degree that he could never want anyone else. But that was orchestrated by the Lord already. A lot of y'all have been sitting there having temper tantrums over something that God had already orchestrated. If he orchestrated your steps, do you think he didn't orchestrate his? Even the bad parts? Even the counterfeit parts? Go back to the movie review I did for The Perfect Match. God even orchestrated the counterfeits that came into their life, because what the counterfeit did to and for them triggered certain thought process, triggered certain wisdom, triggered certain understanding, triggered certain wants and desires to release certain things in their lives. Why? Because the Lord made sure that even the counterfeit made it hard enough for the God ordained spouse that they would let go. At the appointed time, there was going to be a trigger released. Just like I said in the MacGyver word, when the bomb hit the top of the car, there's a trigger release. And because of the trigger release, at a certain point in time, that bomb was going to go off anyway. At a certain point in time, that counterfeit was going to drop off anyway. Let's go here, since we're here in the book of Esther. At a certain point in time, Vashti was going to have to walk out of that position. And in some versions, we've heard that Vashti was killed. That because of her disobedience, that she literally, it wasn't the fact that when you heard in the later part of the book that, oh, Esther could be killed. No, Vashti was killed. In some ways, we thought that she was just exiled from the palace. No, she was taken out completely for her disobedience against the king. I've been seeing a quote on Dr. Jolyn Whitaker's page talking about Vashti's out and Esther's in. And actually, I don't think I said that right. I think it's Dear Esther, Vashti is no longer a threat or something like that. When time, think of it like a trust fund, child. If a person has a trust fund at a specific point in time, there are time release payments that were going to be released at certain age ranges. Yes? Well, when it came down to certain things happening in your or your God ordained spouse, and this is a complete side note, lives, God made sure, and you know it, that as seasons changed, there was a level of pressure, birthing process, as you're birthed from one season to the next. There's a level of pressure that was necessary to push you into the season you're supposed to be in, meaning people, places, and scenarios are going to drop off that are no longer necessary for the season in which you're supposed to be in. We as people have a tendency to get stuck and want to hold on to folks and want to not let go of things and want to not let go of seasons, because we routine people. We like our routine. We like our program. We like our life. There are people that will start their life and work the same job from the time they 16 to 65. Have the same phone number. Ain't gonna change nothing about their life. They have the same daily routine. Everybody knows them. If they need to find them, they know exactly where to find them, because of the fact that at this particular point in time of the day, they're going to be right where they always are. But we as creative, we as artists, we as children of God, we got to keep moving. We got to go through changes. We got to go through transitions. It's a constant. And most people aren't willing to do that, but the ones that continue in their routine, but those of us that are willing to do what others want to get what others haven't gotten, those people end up jealous of us because we positioned ourselves for exaltation. Oh, you thought I wasn't coming back to that? I wasn't. So, with that being said, I think her name is Emily, and she gets to her grandmother's house, and she's sitting there and she's waiting. The grandmother comes down and presents herself. You can tell that she's a very royal presentation, and this girl is very like the ugly duckling of the school. So it's like she's looking like, okay, hi, how nice to meet you. So shoot, what are we supposed to be doing? And she's like, we're gonna have tea and we're gonna talk. So they go out and they start talking, and she says, do you know? And she explains her father, and her father had like 7 names, and she was like, I don't know who that is. And she said, that is the king, and he just passed away. And she says, oh, well, sorry to hear about that. And she said, well, you are his daughter. And she's like, excuse me, can you repeat that? God in your life is king, and he has the ability to not only position you, but to exalt you to a place and position in your life in order to transition you to a level of success and succession that is going to bring about legacy and honor and testimony to him. You understand? Now, in this moment, she finds out that she's a princess. She's like, excuse me? What do you mean I'm a princess? She's like, you're a princess. And she's like, you have the ability to become princess, and you will end up carrying on the lineage of your father, seeing as your father had recently passed. So let's go back to Esther, okay? Think about the moment when Vashti was demoted. I'm thinking about the movie One Night with the King. In it, you see a scene between Esther and Mordecai, where it's been declared that Vashti is no longer the queen. And they are coming into the town to get the eligible women. Now, in these times, in the Bible, there were not royal suitors. There were not, what you call it? The pretty stuff you saw in Cinderella, where we have a scroll, we're making the announcement, and we're going to come house to house, and so on and so forth. And it's done very diplomatically and yeah. In Esther, it was not done like that. They had literal men come to the house and snatch these women up out of their house. I remember listening to, I know it's itchy. I'm kind of having a overcrest moment. And the way that Dr. Jolyn Whitaker explained it in a Periscope about 7 years ago really made you feel like, well, that's kind of violating. Because the way she explained it was, you have a young woman who had no say-so, who was snatched from her home. She was forced into a, what is it? not really. The word I'm hearing in my head is brothel, which is not what it was. Um, but in a circumstance, I want to make it prettier. A circumstance that most people wouldn't want to be in, where you've been taken from your home, you've been put into a situation where you're corralled with a bunch of women, you're being exploited for a man. There's some people that say, or tend to like to say, that these women, every time Xerxes brought them to his chamber, he was sleeping with them. Now, in some cases, believe that Esther did sleep with him. Some do not believe Esther slept with him, that there was something else that attracted Xerxes to Esther, and they didn't sleep together that night. But with that being said, it's like you have women that are being corralled into a house, forced into a situation, sleeping with a man that they do not know in order to be given a exaltation into a queenship, and are being forced to sit at this man's side for the rest of the man's life. That when you think about it and you hear it like that, it don't sound all that nice, right? Not to mention, the king had multiple concubines that when he married Esther, he didn't get rid of them. They just were, because what it was because he had slept with them, they ended up being wives, and he had to care and cater to them just as if they were his wife, but he did not choose them. I'm gonna tell you something that I'm gonna come back and tell you that, because I'm about out of space on this one. I'll be right back.